I started talking to John Dee, he's had so many different wonderful projects to help the environment. I quite lose track of them, but this one really appeals to me. It's called One Tree Per Child. I think, John, are you there?
I am indeed. Good morning, Jeremy.
How are you? Nice to talk to you. I think it was probably Planet Ark, wasn't it, when I first started talking to you? Was that the first project?
We were speaking together, I think, back in the 90s. So back in 1991, Pat Cash and Pat had just lost at Wimbledon and gave me a call and said, I've got to go away for a week. I've got 2 cases of Stella Artois from the Queen's tournament. Mm-hmm. If I don't drink them tonight, they're going to go off. So he invited me over, and safe to say, we made a good effort on trying to avoid all that beer waste, and got a bit drunk, and we decided to start our own environment group that was going to focus on the positive things people could do to help the environment and positive things that businesses could do to help the environment. Because back then, businesses were seen as the bad guys, and Pat and I felt very strongly that actually, why can't we work with businesses to help the environment? You know, a lot of business people we know were very pro-environment, and so we started Planet Ark, and that's when you and I first started talking.
Well, we all need the environment. We've only got one. And we've got to look after it. Now, is this upcoming? University of Adelaide Environment Institute and Green Adelaide will host an evening with pioneer environmentalist John Dee highlighting health-giving potential of trees. Now, has that been or is it coming up?
So that's been, and that was great. That went very well. We had, as with most things with the environment in South Australia, lots of people turned up. And so I was talking about why we need to get more trees in our back gardens, because in Adelaide, I think we're losing about 75,000 trees a year in our backyards and in areas where we used to have backyards. And so it's one of those things where it's really important to make sure that we plant more and more trees. And so hence, back in 2013, Olivia Newton-John, who'd, been a friend of mine for 30 years, we got together and thought, how can we get kids planting more trees, not just here in Australia, but around the world? And then we came up with the idea of 1 tree per child. Let's try and get every kid to plant at least 1 tree before they leave primary school.
Yeah, what I like about that is that if a young child, somewhere between 5 and 10, plants a tree, and it's one that has the potential to grow into something really strong and magnificent, as trees can be,
yes.
I think they have a certain magic. But that child can, in his or her later years, stand back and look at that tree and see how it has grown and what it represents as having taken part in that person's life, and know that here is a tree that I planted. I think that's a wonderful thing to give a child to give to his future.
And what's even better, Jeremy, is actually when you have that, you can even go back within, 5 to 10 years, especially, say, with shrubs. If you're planting shrubs, they can grow quite quickly. And in Shepperton, where we are running 1 tree per child with the local council, they're about to plant their 150,000th tree as part of 1 tree per child, just in the Shepperton area. And we went and had I went back with Costa from, Gardening Australia, and we were... we were trying to film next to where we'd planted some trees back in 2017, or these big shrubs, and it was too noisy. There were so many birds in there, and that to me made me think, this is what it's all about. We're providing new homes and habitat and food sources for Australian wildlife. And the great thing is when the kids see that kind of thing, as they grow, their trees and shrubs are growing with them. And what we definitely see, as you rightly pointed out, is their commitment to things like trees. It benefits all of us, and it benefits our wildlife. And if you in your garden in summer, sometimes it can get a bit hot. If you've got like a deciduous tree, in summer that can give you shade as well, and if you're planting fruit trees, you can get food or nuts, and there are so many benefits to trees, and I think it's very important that at a very young age we teach kids about the good things of trees, because if they learn to appreciate that, they learn to appreciate the wider environment and take a bit of care to look after it.
I remember talking to somebody years ago, and he was literally a tree hugger. He had a belief that if you could, you picked a nice big tree with a substantial trunk, and you put your arms around it and you held it, that you were given energy. There was something that came from...
Was it the Duke of Wellington who used to get strapped to a tree and would go to sleep against it? I think it was like there was some military guy in history. I think it was the Duke of Wellington who
sure.
did that. And look, I've never done it myself.
I've done it, and I believe it. Whether it's psychosomatic or it's actually real, it stands to reason that tree has an enormous energy.
Well, it definitely has energy. I mean, it's interesting. There was a very interesting documentary on how did trees live and how did they suck up the water and how do they create all that oxygen for us? And they are amazing things. And so one of the things we're trying to do with One Tree Per Child is actually educate the kids about those kind of issues on how do trees suck all that pollution out of the air and give us oxygen in return? How do they, manage all that water that they have inside them?
How do they know to do it?
Amazing.
How do they know to do it?
They're amazing things.
Yeah.
And apparently they talk to each other. There's a way trees communicate with each other, when there are fires and things like that. And but let me tell you one thing though, before we finish. What is really interesting, I think, is how much the community likes One Tree Per Child. So we're now in 11 countries planting trees. And one of the most exciting things is how many people are turning up to our plantings. And we had a tree giveaway in Onkaparinga in South Australia only, I think, about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And 2,500 locals turned up in the course of 1.5 hours to get their free trees. And what else are we doing in the community where we can get 2,500 people, apart from a footy game or something like that, to get that many people turning up? We were very excited by that because I think it shows that this is not a political issue. It's not one of those issues where it's only for kind of greeny types. This is for all of us, and all of us, I think, should be planting trees because they're wonderful things. Yes. And, our birds, some of our bird populations are really suffering at the moment and the numbers are dropping. So the more of those, for example, in Onkaparinga, we're helping the black cockatoos. And so a lot of the trees and shrubs we're planting are to help them. And so it's very important that if we live in an area, no matter where we are in the world, because I know you go beyond just South Australia, it's really important to find out what are the kind of trees and shrubs that may be in short numbers in your community. Talk to your local council or talk to your local land care group and find out and maybe get involved and plant some of them. And I think it's a practical, simple thing that we can all do. And one thing we're doing is we've got lots of garden centres backing us. So we're working with Garden Centres Australia to encourage people to go down to the local garden centre and get a tree or a shrub that they plant with their grandchildren. So Jimmy Barnes, who I've known Jimmy since 1992. He was the first rock and roller to get behind Planet Ark. And Jimmy and Jane, his wife, are amazing gardeners, and he loves planting trees. So he's fronting that campaign. And so when he's already taken a photo with his grandchild to help support it. And I'm glad to say we're getting a lot of garden centres getting involved. So if you do want to, if you're listening now and you're thinking, oh yeah, I might get involved with this, maybe get my grandchild or my child involved, just go down to your local garden centre and get their advice on how to get involved, how to get a tree or a shrub that will work for your garden, and they can give you good advice on how to plant it and how to look after it.
What sort of a garden have you got?
I've got a big garden. I live in the Blue Mountains, so I'm speaking to you today from Katoomba. So we've got a whole range of native trees in the garden, but we've got a deciduous tree that I planted with my dad right by the kitchen because that's where it was getting too hot in summer. Mm-hmm. So we planted a deciduous tree there. So in winter, like now, it drops its leaves, so we get the benefit of the sun coming in during winter. But in summer, it gives us the best shade possible, So that's, that's the one non-native tree that we've got, but it provides real comfort for the house.
Yes, no, that's beautiful. John, we'll talk again. Let me know if you venture into South Australia or if there's anything we can do in our little patch.
Yeah, great to chat to you again, Jeremy. Too long.
I can promise you my little patch is very, very green.
I'm glad to hear it, mate. You look after yourself, Jeremy.
I will. John Dee, thank you so
mate.
much.